Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts. I'm your host, Rudo, joined by AJ Hafley. Today, we're talking about the rest of the Central Division when it comes to the expansion draft. We already covered the Avs yesterday. Highly recommend you go check out that show. Also have some fancy little graphics for you today. So if you're not watching on YouTube, maybe go check us out there. Like and subscribe to the video. That helps us out a bunch. Yeah, we'll get, there you go. Like, subscribe. If you really love us, you can hit the notification bell. Get notified every single time we go live. Mostly, YouTube's a little iffy with that
which if you're an all sports fan, it's great. If you're a one sport fan, it might be a little tough.
It could get excessive. I won't lie. We make a lot of content on this channel.
Yeah. Yo, we're pulling for Italy.
Are we?
All Italy.
Are we?
Yes. Sorry, JJ. pulling for Italy.
I kind of want to see Andre meltdown though.
In happiness.
Fair enough. In any case, we're not talking about Italy and Spain. We're talking about the Central Division. As for the record, if you haven't heard, divisions are going back to normal next year, except for Arizona will be joining the Central Division, with Seattle coming into the Pacific to make it 8-8.
Are you excited for the new division alignment?
I'm excited for more easy wins for Colorado.
Not excited that it has to be Arizona, where it's like these games have been so boring for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like you perfectly encapsulated their expansion draft situation as well, because I think there are some teams that are going to have some interesting question marks coming into the expansion draft from the Central, but Arizona isn't really one of them.
Yeah.
All of their decisions are pretty darn straightforward. They only have Kemper to protect in goal. And I think we have the graphic that we can bring up here for Arizona. Yeah, there we go. Their defense, obviously, they have to protect OEL. He has an NMC. And then they're protecting Chychrun and Lyubushkin. The only other contracted defenseman through 2022 that they have is Capobianco. So that's the only really one that they're exposing. Excuse me. And then on the forward side, they're protecting Keller. They have to protect Kessel with an NMC as well. Schmaltz, Dvorak, Krause, Fisher, and Garland. There are a couple of guys on the offensive side. Pitlick is available. Johan Larsson is available. And they have a handful of RFAs as well that are kind of less interesting.
Well, and you have a guy like Michael Bunting who had such a crazy finish to the season.
Yeah, 7 goals in like 4 games out of nowhere. Yeah.
Where you start to you're kind of wondering. You're like, I wonder if that's a guy, or a guy like Blake Spears who was part of the Taylor Hall trade.
Yeah.
Dryden Hunt and John Hayden are both guys that have had looks with them, and I guess if they really, really liked them, they could talk themselves into just keeping that guy around to make sure. But that's really kind of it. Like I had kind of a hard time with this one just because Lawson Krause. I was like, Lawson Krause, Johan Larsson, Tyler Pitlick, they're all kind of the same guy, except Lawson Krause is 24 years old. So I guess him. And then on defense with Lyubushkin and Capobianco, it was really just a coin flip between those two. Yep. And I went with Lyubushkin just because he's an NHL guy. He's a really limited third pairing guy, but an obvious one. And honestly, their most interesting piece that's unprotected might be Aiden Hill.
Yeah,
in net.
That is true. He does not have a contract, but he is an RFA next year, and at 25, with a decent amount of NHL experience as well, given the number of injuries Arizona's goaltenders have seen over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So.
For the record, that's why we're not looking at Antti Ranta more seriously here.
The dude hasn't been healthy in like 4 years, so it's really tough to seriously look at him. Or if we did, we'd also have to probably take a closer look at them looking at someone like Francouz. And I struggle with the goaltender position a lot for Seattle because I look at the Aiden Hills of the world. I look at even the Pavel Francouzes of the world. And I think there has to be someone certainly more NHL experienced than those guys out there. But
well, I continue to say this, but Jake Allen is right there.
Yeah. So I struggle with the goaltender position for sure. But
the Canadian government is calling me. Hold on.
Oh, AJ's got about to be freed from quarantine. You got muted during that, but enjoy your phone call. Continuing on.
I just wanted to make sure there was information that didn't need to be shared on those streams.
Definitely safe move.
So I tried to mute him as fast as I could.
Yeah, good call on that one. Continuing with Arizona, basically, they're just not very interesting on the whole. You can pick who you want from the available people, and I don't think the Coyotes have a lot of work to do. I see y'all talking about them trying to move OEL and Kessel. They've already tried to move OEL. That contract, I don't see how they could move it. It'd be very, very tough. He's not going to waive his NMC, I don't think, either, to go to Seattle. So, going to be a tough spot, I guess, that for Arizona, but they're going to lose a dude worth $1 million, $1.5 million, maybe less, and move on with their lives. So, we can move on from Arizona and get to Chicago next. This one is a little bit weird just because of all the NMCs that they've given out. Duncan Keith on the defensive side, and then Taze, who did not play at all last year, still has an NMC. And then Patrick Kane has an NMC as well. Kane, obviously, they're not complaining too much about that one. But the other two are interesting. Obviously, Taves is expected to return, I believe, next year, but hasn't played at all. And then Keith has been a little bit in the rumors about them trying to move him around. Beyond those two, on defense, they also are protecting, for us, Connor Murphy and Nikita Zadorov. That exposes Calvin DeHaan. We'll get into that conversation once AJ is done talking to the government. Goaltending, they're protecting Lankinen. That one's super straightforward for them. He became their starter this year. Delia and Subban, not that interesting. So that side is straightforward. On the forward side, they have Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taze, Alex Brinkat, Brett Connolly, Dylan Strome, David Kampf, and Adam Gaudette. Not a ton interesting for them on the defensive side. They have NHLers. You could take Ryan Carpenter, is still available there. I believe they also leave a couple of RFAs like Josh Dickinson or John Quinville. Oh, Quinville's a UFA, actually. Excuse me. But this one, I think, really comes down to, it's a slam dunk of, do they want to protect Nikita Zadorov or do they want to protect Calvin DeHaan? And whichever one they don't protect is going to look very, very juicy for Seattle. Thank you so much for the yacht fund again, Sasha. $10 at a time. We're working it down from 22 billion to 21.99 million, something like that. Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. Someone like Kampf is a quality player, guys that would work as your depth options, but I just don't think anywhere near as enticing as a Calvin DeHaan, or potentially there is a universe where they protect DeHaan over Zadorov, and Zadorov could head to Seattle. They could take Riley Stillman, I suppose, as well on the defensive side. But I don't think it's a complicated process for Chicago. I just think that they're going to lose a decent player on the defensive side, no matter what, unless they try to do something weird. We'll see how it ends up working out. Seattle, the problem with looking at it this early is Seattle hasn't really dug into the trades that they're going to make. So if someone could look to do something, Chicago might be on that list because they really only need to protect that one extra guy. Wouldn't take a ton to get that protection, you would think. But eventually, Seattle's got to pick guys from a team, right? It's not going to... They can't just make the cute move with everybody. So I expect it to be DeHaan that goes. We'll see if AJ agrees with me in a bit. But basically, so far, the Central Division is not that interesting, but the other teams in this division are going to get a little bit more interesting as we go down the list. So looking forward to it. We can get back to Chicago in a bit. Let's just move on to Dallas. Get another pretty straightforward team out of the way. The obvious one here is the goaltender position. We're protecting Bishop because why wouldn't you, despite the injuries? That leaves Anton Khudobin available. Certainly someone you have to think that Seattle has to at least consider, but not maybe the starting goaltender. I mean, I don't know. Some people think Khudobin can be a starter. We'll have to wait and see. Beyond that, on the defensive side, they protected Lindell, Klingberg, and Heiskanen. Those are all super straightforward picks. The only other defenseman that is particularly interesting that is not hitting UFA is Sekera. So they wanted a cheap veteran defenseman. I guess they could look at that, but I don't expect them to. On the forward side, Sagan, Ben, and Radulov all have NMCs. They would protect certainly Sagan and Ben no matter what, and probably Radulov as well anyway. Then we also threw Pavelski, Faksa, Hintz, and Gurionov on the protected list for them, which leaves a whole lot of depth 40 guys. Again, when you're protecting 7 guys on the forward side, it's pretty tough to get high-end quality out of that. Leaves guys like Coglianos, who's hitting UFA a little bit. Como, they could get for a year. Someone like Tanner Caro. Again, at best, you're getting a third, fourth line guy. So for me, I'm looking at Khudobin there, but I suspect AJ might have other options in mind, given his want for Jake Allen. But AJ's back now, and he looks sad.
Yeah, just it's the same. So it's of course. So these quarantine officers call me every morning, and then if I'm not awake, would they call me? Then they call me again in the afternoon.
Gotcha.
And they read from the same script. And it's just like it's just over and over and over and over. The same couple of questions, and it just drives me crazy. So, but I have to do it. I am in quarantine for 3 more days, and then I am free. Watch out, Manitoba.
AJ coming for you.
Yeah, I've got 6 days to do everything that I want to do, and then I leave back. I drive back home to Denver.
At least you don't have to quarantine next time.
Yeah, true. So the quick note on Chicago.
Yeah.
I imagine you touched on this, but it sounds like Duncan Keith is in the process of getting traded.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
If that happens, obviously Calvin DeHaan gets protected.
Yeah, right. And then there's not a ton. Yeah, if DeHaan gets protected, you're looking at like Ryan Carpenter as maybe a target for Chicago as far as Seattle is concerned. But
yeah, again, this is one where you could either look at Malcolm Subban as well in net, or you could look at Ryan, as you mentioned, Ryan Carpenter. This might be one of the ones where they just take a UFA,
sure.
like Hinostroza, and if they sign him, then great, and if they don't, then they had to take somebody.
We're not too sad about it, yeah.
This just isn't a roster that has anybody that you seriously are interested in, unless
if they can't move Keith, then you slam dunk DeHaan if he's available, basically. But
well, and maybe what you do is you take the chance on Henrik Borgstrom.
Sure.
So, it's Anthony. They actually already did relax. Canadian government relaxed quarantine. The new order went into effect today.
Yep.
But I have to finish out.
Yeah.
Yep. I have to finish my personal quarantine first. So.
Then we moved on to Dallas really quick. Again, one that I don't think is super complicated.
Yeah. I only protected Ben Bishop because of the NMC, and I just don't know what's going on in that situation. I fully would imagine that he waives that and that Anton Khudobin gets protected.
Do you think he will?
Yeah, I think that there's no chance Seattle takes him. So,
boy, I'd be tempted to take him. I guess another guy with serious injury history.
Yeah, too many injuries. Too many injuries.
All right. Well, then there's not if you're not looking at the goalies, there's not a ton from Dallas either. You could get depth forward like Como for a year or something, but
if I will say so, if a couple of things here, would have an interest in Alexiak, just getting the jump on him.
Have the UFA talks early, sure.
Exactly. Would have an interest in a guy, depending on how they feel about Honka. If Bishop does not waive and he gets protected, then obviously Khudobin is a guy that I would have a seriously long conversation about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the other guy on this list, the Jason Dickinson, a solid forward, not great. Like he's not, not a really high end guy or anything, but a guy that has proven himself to be a pretty decent NHL player and young enough, and as a center, they're going to have a hard time finding centers.
I mean, is that something that the NHL has learned going into this expansion draft? Because you look at Vegas's forward core, and most of the upper end of the talent that they got from the expansion draft was from teams doing stupid things.
Well, and you look at like William Karlsson. William Karlsson was Columbus's fourth line center.
Yep.
Like, and he was already on his second franchise because he was drafted by Anaheim.
Yep.
So you had two franchises that missed this guy as a top six center, and so I think that's where a guy like Dickinson is going to
give him that type of an opportunity and see what happens.
Exactly. That's where the Seattle's going to have to. That's the one position Seattle's just going to have to take a chance on, guys, because they're not going to they just won't have very many center options. As we will see the rest of this week, because we are going through every team, every division, team by team, and doing all of these lists for the rest of this week. For those who have asked, we will be doing a mock. One last expansion mock draft, but we will be doing it the week of the actual expansion draft. So after protection lists have come out, so we're not guessing on everything anymore.
So the proper mock isn't, well, Duncan Keith might get traded.
Yeah, exactly. Because like right now, you look at Chicago and you're like, well, I'll take Calvin DeHaan.
Yeah.
And easily, right?
Yep.
But if that guy gets protected, then you're probably just burning your Chicago pick. So anyway, point being, I think Jason Dickinson will be a guy from Dallas who will be an interesting name to watch because he's exactly the archetype of who Seattle is going to have to take a chance on to fill center spots.
Yeah. Again, they're going to have to take those chances, and unless another team does something Florida level dumb and gives Seattle Marchessault and a Riley Smith.
Yeah. A third of a team's top six.
They're going to have a hard time filling out their top six with actual high-end talent.
Yep.
So,
and that was a money dump. They got rid of they didn't want the contracts around anymore.
Yep. They thought Marchessault was overpaid.
Well, a lot of silly things happened in Florida for a few years. It looks like they're on the right path right now, but they had the whole push and pull between Dale Talon and the Computer Boys.
Yeah,
going one direction and then the other, and then back again, and
a lot of things happen in Florida every day, thanks to Florida Man.
Yeah, yes. This is not the most Florida thing ever that the Stanley Cup final may or may not be decided during a hurricane.
Yeah. Next to the on fire Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, dude, those videos were crazy.
Yep. It's pretty wild. But AJ, you are our man on the inside, apparently, with Ball. As
yeah.
I'm told you know multiple people that work for them.
I do. A couple of our listeners are Ball Corp employees, which calling it like Ball Corp or the Ball Corporation, it's got such an evil sounding moniker.
It definitely does sound like they have a super giant building that like it's cloudy and dusky.
Yeah. Like fast forward 20 years and into like a dystopian future where it's like the only corporation that's left and everybody works there. So Amazon. I described Amazon.
You have described Amazon, basically.
No,
correct.
so apparently one of our guys that works there, long time friend of the show, Randy, says that he said that one of the reasons that he actually genuinely really likes working there is that they will hire you for pretty much anything right now because they're just trying to get some people just trying to get some people employed, just trying to get some people in the building because they're doing a lot of stuff. And whatever you're not like necessarily trained for, they will teach you how to do, and that they pay competitive wages and provide benefits along the way. So I know two people who work there. Both of them speak highly of it. Both of them really like it. Randy went into more detail about what he does, and he's a big fan. So anybody, and I know coming on the other side of the pandemic, a lot of folks are looking for work. Well, they're trying to give as many people jobs as they can find to ramp up production of things. So whatever, a good place to work. They pay competitive wages. You're not going to be hearing the same kind of horror stories.
Yeah, and it's a lot more than just like aluminum cans and cups and stuff. They also work in the aerospace industry.
Yeah.
They do a bunch of other natural resource surveillance, things like that. So they have a whole wide range of things. They're also trying their best to get to a more sustainable model by 2030. They're aiming to reduce carbon emissions by 55% across their chain. So they're really working on the sustainability side of it, as I'm sure you've heard about with their aluminum cans and recyclability and all of that. Here, local to Colorado, they have a 400 person even can producing plant down in Golden, and they're adding more to that. So as AJ was talking about, they are looking to hire people.
Yeah.
You can get in contact with them either by texting Golden to 77222 or go to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden. You can get hooked up with these guys and get yourself back in the workforce, get yourself making decent wages again. As we're still starting to come out of COVID a little bit. I know it feels like, at least in the States, that we've been out of it for a while, but the job markets have been pretty fluctuating.
Yeah, slow to bounce back
For sure. So
turns out a lot of people are actually interested in making a living wage.
crazy, right?
So weird, right?
Ball has the hookup for that. Again,
Yep.
text Golden to 77222 to get hooked up with Ball. Also brought to y'all by Breckenridge Brewery. So, maybe you can go make some cans for Breck Brew with Ball. You can get them down at the DNVR bar as well, or check your local liquor store. Find the Good Company hard seltzers as well. They make absolutely awesome products. Look, you don't need to tell me twice. If someone gives me a Breck beer, I'm drinking it. It's very, very simple for me. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Rudo and AJ coming at you. Let's get into a team that is a little bit more interesting in Minnesota for this expansion draft.
This is maybe the one big franchise that we have to wait on to see who waives NMCs, because if they can get Suter and Parise to waive NMCs, it changes this entire outlook.
Yeah. So to be clear, Parise, Zuccarello, Suter, Spurgeon, and Brodin all have NMCs.
And if you're Minnesota, Zuccarello, Spurgeon, and Brodin, you really don't mind protecting.
Yeah, right.
With Suter, it's more just about the age. Come on, is Seattle really gonna take him? And with Parise, that's a bad relationship at this point.
Yep.
But if they are able to So if they don't get those waves, I have them going 4-4 because they don't want to just lose Matt Dumba.
Yeah, not for
and
free.
Then protecting Fiala and Eriksson Ek, who they just gave the monster contract extension to. I think it would be a tough decision between Fiala and Jordan Greenway. Fiala obviously is a much more important offensive player, but Greenway is a much more important identity type of guy for them.
Yeah.
So I think that is an interesting conversation about who would be available for Seattle. If it were this alignment, I think Jordan Greenway is the easy. You just take Jordan Greenway.
Yep, agreed. And our local Wild fan in the chat, Ian, explaining that they're not likely to do the 8 skater style if they can find any way to waive an NMC.
Yeah.
Or potentially move Matt Dumba for something before the expansion draft, if that's the way. Because if they're exposing Dumba, Seattle just takes him and moves on with their life. It's very simple.
Yeah, and if they get the wave, so if Suter and Parise wave, then they protect Dumba,
yep.
And then they switch to 7-3. In which case, I have them protecting Zuccarello, Fiala, Foligno, Greenway, Bukestad, Hartman, and Eriksson Ek. And really, the only guys that would be exposed at that point, like Nico Sturm, Nick Bonino, Victor Rask, those types of guys.
Not a whole lot of interesting there.
Not guys that you're overly interested in, for sure. And then on the back end, Carson Soucy. Yeah. If you wanted, like, I guess maybe Ian Cole or Brad Hunt as UFAs. But I'm, and in net, Capo Kakinen could be of interest.
I think, for sure. If they're protecting Talbot, Kakinen would be available as a young goaltender.
Yeah. So that is look, Ian, if they go 7-3 no matter what, and they choose to lose Matt Dumba over Jordan Greenway, the rest of the Central Division is happy with that decision.
Yep.
If Bill Guerin wants to do something stupid, that's perfectly fine.
Yep.
That's every single team in the Central Division
would love to see Matt Dumba
would happily just be like, okay, well, now you guys don't have Matt Dumba anymore, but you get to keep Jordan Greenway. Like, oh, great.
Yeah.
They'll all take that. Every single team in the Central Division would love that. So, anyway, the Cam Talbot, Capo Kakinen thing I think is interesting. Kakinen, his first year in the NHL, it was a decent year. He had a really great start, and then Colorado brought him back to earth, and he stayed there for pretty much the rest of the year. Cam Talbot had a phenomenal year. Was probably their number one reason, not named Kirill Kaprizov, that they were where they were at the end of the year.
Yeah, which their whole Kaprizov situation is a whole other thing at the moment right now. But
yeah, I think that's going to get sorted out. I'm genuinely not worried about it.
For the record, the Russian guys, when their contract is up, this happens every time where they're like, oh, I could go back to Russia, and then they
yeah.
But
it's always like this, where you just hear about it, where it's like, oh well, the threat of Russia looms, and you're like, okay, well, if that guy really wants to, like, he played in the he played in the NHL on an ELC for ELC money, just when he's getting ready to make like serious money. He wants to go back to Russia. Yeah. If that's what he wants to do, like, more power to him, man. I mean, it sucks for the NHL. I hope he doesn't leave. I'm not honestly all that worried about it. I think he'll stay. He'll get paid, and he'll be the face of the Wild for the next 5 years.
Would there be any interest from Seattle's point of view if they waive in Parise or Suter?
I would have an interest in Suter, yeah. In Parise, no, absolutely not.
given that he was a healthy scratch multiple times this year.
Well, and like
Suter would be more interesting than Parise, definitely.
Parise was really always like a high skill grinder.
Yep.
Like he was always a super high effort, like a high skill grinder, basically, is and we see that now. Some of that skill he's lost some of that, but the rest of his game hasn't changed. He plays the same way. It's just not. It's not as effective anymore.
Goals a season anymore.
Yeah. He's just not the same player. Whereas Suter is still totally fine. Like you look at his underlyings, and is he ever going to push for a Norris again? No.
Well, I mean, look at the way he plays. He understands conservation of energy a little bit. He knows how to not burn himself out in a way. Like honestly, we saw EJ play as he started to age a bit. Parise is very contained, or not Parise, Suter, excuse me, is very contained, plays a passive enough style that he can get away with it as he starts to really get up into his later 30s.
The real issue with Suter is that he's just not worth that money anymore.
Yeah, definitely not.
And he's on a decline. If you look at his underlying numbers, man, they're getting a little bit worse every year. They're not in like a, oh my God, this is a disaster zone right now. But if you were to blindly put Ryan Graves and Ryan Suter's numbers next to each other, Ryan Graves would look like the better player. And that's a problem. Like if Suter's contract was 1 or 2 years, I think Seattle would have a really good argument to take him. Yeah. Okay. But given that contract ends in 2025,
you get into the 4th year left of that thing, and that's basically $7 million dead cap.
$7.5 million. They would be doing a huge favor for Minnesota.
All of a sudden, Minnie has a ton of flexibility if Seattle were to do that.
It would be what's the difference between Carson Soucy as a player and Ryan Suter as a player right now. It's not
$5 million worth.
It's not $5 million plus years.
Yeah.
At this point, you would rather just take Carson Soucy and just call it a day.
All right.
Ideally, they get stuck in an 8 skater alignment, and you take Jordan Greenway. If that doesn't happen, then I think it's either Kakkonen or Carson Soucy are the guys that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think we might have a penchant to look at the defensemen to take a little bit more.
I do think Nick Bjugstad would be intriguing, especially on the new contract for it's like $1 million.
I think $2 million.
So
maybe it was cheaper than that. Yeah.
It was. I remember looking at it and going, "Boy, that's really cheap."
Find out. It is $900K. Yep. Well, wait, that's not correct. That was this year.
No, that's his new one.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like.
Yeah. So I will definitely repeat myself then.
I almost wonder if they try to sneak him on the protected list then, but.
Well, and if they go again, if they do go to the 7-3, I have him protected.
Yeah.
But if they get to 8, then I think he becomes a lot more of an interesting option for them. Because again, centers are going to be hard to come by. All
right. So gonna have to be a ask again later from the Magic 8 Ball in Minnesota, maybe.
I think Minnesota's is the biggest we will see.
Yep.
And then a lot of decisions have to be made from Minnesota and if they make a deal or not.
Yeah. Let's get to the other big one in the Central. Nashville. Obviously running into a problem on their defensive side. Look, Yossi, Ellis, and Ekholm, those are 3 dudes that you're not going to leave out there. But then you also have the young and budding Dante Fabro.
Yeah.
On the defensive side, you've gone 4-4 here. Unless they move somebody, I think it makes all the sense in the world for them to go 4-4. On the forward side, you protected Duchesne, Johansson, Forsberg, and Kunin, which leaves open a number of different choices for Seattle on the forward side.
Yeah, with Sissons and Yarncrook and Grimaldi, you have guys that are under contract.
Yep.
I guess if you want to go down that list, Yakov Trenin and Nick Cousins are also guys they could consider. Trenin being 24 years old would be interesting. The reason that I protected Cunnin over all those other guys is just because he's 23. That was entirely it. All these depth guys, Grimaldi is now 28, Yarncrook is 29. Howla and Granlund are both UFAs. I don't know what their situations are, how likely they are to return. But Cunnin I ended up protecting entirely because he's 23. And Dante Fabro, the same thing. He's a young defenseman that they've got. They no longer have that like classic Nashville pipeline on defense. They just don't. If they lose Dante Fabro, they don't have anybody in the organization to just step up and take his spot.
They've burned pretty much all of their resources on the defensive side. I do think I think Granlund is a little bit more interesting for Seattle than maybe you do.
Well, I think it's hard with the UFAs.
Right, I get it. Like there has to be a conversation on whether they think they can get the guy signed or whatever. But yeah. I do think Granlund could fall into that category of like he's someone you can get away with playing as a 2C.
Yeah.
If, like we said, Seattle's probably going to have a hard time finding centers. But there are other options. If they want a long-term depth forward, you can go Sissons, who signed through 2026, or you mentioned Yarncrook, who's a UFA after the year, but only cost $2 million. So
yeah,
forward, unless Nashville does something dumb and exposes a quality defenseman, it certainly seems like forward is the way to go here. And then obviously they're protecting Saros and net, and Rene's a UFA and is terrible now. So.
Yeah, I do think that there would be some interest in if the background check that they will have to be doing comes up clean on Connor Ingram. I think he's a real dark horse to keep your eye on. 24 years old.
I'm not buying that.
I'm sorry. He's been a really, really good AHL goaltender.
No, don't get me wrong. I know Ingram is a quality player, but he's on his third organization now?
His second, I think.
Is it only his second?
I think he was a Tampa Bay draft pick.
That sounds right.
Yeah, he was. He was a Tampa Bay pick, so he's only on a second organization.
Well, not as bad as I thought, maybe,
but he's had multiple issues over the years. Well, we don't know what they are. They've been undisclosed, but like Tampa Bay just was like, get this guy away from us. So for a guy that's been an all-star in the AHL, you have to kind of wonder like what's going on here. And he's been really good in the AHL for a number of years. So I just would they prioritize him? I don't know, but they have to take multiple goaltenders. They have to walk out with 3 or 4. Like they're required.
They're required to take 3. Yeah.
So a 24-year-old Connor Ingram as maybe your AHL guy, maybe your backup. You're hoping that he can be a cheap backup. He signed for 2 years at less than $1 million. Like maybe because I don't love Seattle's options with Nashville. If they can come to a deal, if they're confident they can get a deal with Granlund done, I think he's their best fit.
I would agree.
He's the best player that they're going to have. He might be their number 1C, honestly.
The thing about the third string goaltender this year especially is tough for me because you look at Ingram, he played 5 games in the AHL this year.
Yeah, this year I'm willing to bin this entire season.
So am I to a certain extent, but you're also now, especially when it comes to selecting goaltenders, you're making selections off of at least a year ago.
Yeah, well, but again, like Connor Ingram's entire AHL career has been really good.
Sure.
His worst year was the 5 games he played this season.
By a significant margin, yeah. So,
like, he's been a really good, and that's why I would say I've always said, like, keep an eye on the Ingram thing because I think he's a really talented AHL goaltender. He's 24 years old. If assuming that there's still some sort of background issue that they have to figure out, if it comes back clean and they're all good with it, I think he could be as intriguing an option as Granlund if you project out long term.
It has to be long term, right? I guess I'm looking shorter term at this draft because it's hard for me to pass up bona fide NHL roster spots for him on this Nashville roster.
Yeah, if Granlund gets protected, then I think it becomes an even louder conversation.
Sure.
If Granlund is unprotected, as we have him in right here,
yeah,
then you have a really good argument for Granlund. Again, he could be your 1 seat realistically on opening night.
Yep.
And whoever you draft second overall will be your 2 seat. Matty Beniers, baby!
Sometimes it's that easy. We can take our second period break there as we are brought to y'all by Solace Meds. That's SOLACE meds.com. You can get 20% off when you use code DNVR20 at checkout. Get your stuff for pickup from one of their 4 locations here in Colorado. Also, be sure to check them out. They have a bunch of deals in store as well on products ranging from 10 to 25% off. So whatever you need, you can get a great deal. It's super easy to get in and out quickly with these guys. In fact, there's one store just a couple blocks away from the DNVR bar. So jump on it, get your THC product needs from Solace Meds, and use that DNVR20 code online for your pickup order. Also, brought to you by Hassel Cattle Company. Damn good beef. The Wagyu beef burger, absolutely delicious. I get it most of the time now when I go down to the DNVR bar, but they also have all the meat you can imagine under the sun, whether it be bone-in ribeyes or New York strips or sirloins, whatever you need, you can order it from HassleCattleCompany.com. Use code DNVR10 to get 10% off your entire order. And if you order $200 or more, you get a little group order going with your buddies, you get free shipping as well. And the big one, DraftKings Sportsbook, main sponsor of this podcast, giving you the odds boost every single day, and especially when you sign up for a new account with code DNVR, they're giving you the chance to turn $1 into $264 with UFC 264. Pick McGregor, pick Poirier, pick someone to get knocked out in the first round, win yourself $264. It's just that easy. Bing, bang, boom. When you win $264, I expect a donation to the yacht fund. I'm just gonna throw it out there. That's all I'm saying. But
anytime you have extra money laying around, we expect donations to the yacht fund.
Exactly right. So get in there, get your new account. Remember to use that DNVR code and get your shot at $264. If you don't care about MMA, you can still bet on the basketball finals. There's at least one more game in the Stanley Cup Finals that you can bet on as well. You can also bet on baseball, Tour de France, esports, league hockey in Europe. You can bet on the KHL in Russia if you want. Get in there. Find something you enjoy and want to put some money down on. Let me tell you, it's a lot more interesting watching random sports when you don't even have to bet a lot of money. Like, I'll just put like $1 down on something. You get a lot more invested. Suddenly you start sounding like Andre watching Italy when you have a couple bucks on the line. So,
my man with the drive-by there.
Yeah, he knows. Anyway, download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use that DNVR promo code for that chance to win $264 from $1. Place your bet and watch the fist fly this weekend. It must be DraftKings Sportsbook, 21 or older, Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Have you figured out monthly operating costs for that yacht? Well, when it's parked in the parking lot behind the bar, the operating costs are going to be $0.
That's not true. We'll have to hire somebody to take care of it.
Just let it rot in the parking lot.
Yeah, we bought a yacht and then neglected it in the back parking lot of our bar.
Really a great investment.
Please continue giving us money.
Okay. Couple more teams to get to in the Central here. Let's go with St. Louis next. They do have a little bit of an interesting situation on defense, I think. Obviously, they're protecting Binnington in goal.
Yeah.
They just signed him to that ridiculous $6 million deal, so they've made their bed. But on the defensive side, we have them protecting Parayko, Falk, and Krug. That leaves Scandella available, as well as Vince Dunn as an RFA available.
Yeah, and with Scandella, I think that you just kind of wave that off and you're like, we're good.
He's 31, sure.
Vince Dunn is the conversation.
All right. Just to round it out on the forward side, they're protecting O'Reilly, Tarasenko, Perron, Kyrou, Thomas, Sundqvist, and Shen. Pretty straightforward for them on the forward side.
The only potential alteration that I could see here is the Sundqvist. They could use that on Schwartz if they wanted, who's a pending UFA. They could use that on Sammy Blais, Mackenzie McEacher, and any of these guys that they have signed.
Pick your favorite RFA, basically.
Kyle Clifford if they wanted, I guess. Zach Sanford, any of these guys. But I picked Sundqvist because he was signed and he's a big part. He's been a really big part of their depth success when they've been good. And he was hurt last year, so we didn't really get to see how important he was for them. And with the uncertainty surrounding Schwartz, he's always injured, and just what do you do? What do they do with that whole?
Well, to your points, if Vince Dunn is there, it's hard to look at any of these forwards seriously, I think.
Agreed. Like I would. It's the same kind of conversation with Nashville, where Jaden Schwartz when Jaden Schwartz is healthy, when he's good, you're very intrigued. The other conversation is Tarasenko. We know that they kind of want to unload him. He's not the same guy. He's taking up a lot of money. If you're Seattle, if St. Louis makes the big play and leaves Tarasenko unprotected, do you just take him and hope for the best?
I would like that play, but I've always liked Tarasenko quite a bit.
Me too. I think he's been a great guy, been a great player, but $7.5 million for 2 more years for a team that fancies itself trying to compete for a cup like St. Louis. I think they understand they can't continue to do this with Tarasenko anymore, this diminished version. Sure. Whereas Seattle's free to take that chance. He could be their highest paid guy and be like, okay, well, for just 2 more years, even if he doesn't live up to it, that's fine. Seattle doesn't really care that much if it doesn't go very well.
Yeah. If I'm Seattle, I would take Tarasenko in a heartbeat if he's available. I'll put it that way. But
okay, so we agree.
A question in chat here, which I do think maybe is worth talking about after the tough year for Krug. Protect Dunn over Krug?
Well, they wouldn't, because they were trying to get rid of Vince Dunn at the beginning of the year, and I think they're still motivated to move Vince Dunn. And if the expansion draft is the way that they have to do it, then I guess that's just the way they have to do it. But I don't think they can protect Krug over Dunn. I don't think they would do that.
Okay, fair enough.
Especially because they've turned themselves into an interesting UFA destination that will pay players, that has a certain reputation, and a year after Torrey Krug uproots his life and leaves Boston and goes and takes the big chance in St. Louis to expose him and then potentially lose him in expansion.
Yeah,
it's not a great look for an organization that would have a PR problem on their hands, and I don't know how much they would care about that, but I think it would hurt their reputation as a player destination.
It's a tough spot, right? Because especially with the Binnington contract that the Blues handed out, they really are committed to trying to win again in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard for them to retool. Most of these guys that we're talking about, this protection list, O'Reilly is 30, Tarasenko is 29, Shen is 29, Perron is 33, Robert Thomas and Kyrou are the young bird. That's the 22 and 23. They're the future, right? And they've traded away so many of their recent picks.
Yep.
For in Dominic Bach was in the Falk deal. They've made so many moves. They've moved out players in order to try and make this happen right now. But it's they're in a really tough spot, man, where they've spent a lot of money on a roster that just got absolutely housed.
Yeah.
In the postseason.
If they were in a different spot, I'd almost say do something a little crazy, maybe like expose Perron because he only got 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah, I don't even think that's crazy. Honestly, they exposed Perron in the Vegas draft.
Well, Perron hadn't quite gone off just yet at that point, but
yeah, I mean, David Perron's had a really solid career,
sure.
And obviously these last couple of years it's been at a different level. But like they could easily justify exposing David Perron. It's just when you look at how the Blues were, and again, look at their postseason series against Colorado. Without David Perron, look how useless they were.
Right. That's what I'm saying is they, as a team that's still trying to win, they can't afford to lose him.
Whereas you keep Perron, you expose Tarasenko, you have $7.5 million to do something.
Go get a valuable piece that way.
Go get a Brandon Saad for $4 million and then sign a decent backup goaltender, so you don't lose all of your backup games. Go get another defenseman with some of the leftover money. Like there's go have a Brandon Saad, Jamie Alexiak free agent spending spree instead of 7.5 on Tarasenko, who's no longer the guy that we all think of him as.
Okay, let's move on to our last one. AJ, on site in Winnipeg.
Yeah, boots on the ground, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Defensive side, I think it's pretty straightforward. Morrissey Pionk, the young Logan Stanley. I guess they could protect DeMello if they wanted instead of Stanley.
That's where I think this conversation will go.
Okay, so we'll get to that. Obviously, goaltender is no doubt in the world, Hellebuck. And then they have an NMC with Wheeler that they have to protect, but the rest of the forward protects are pretty straightforward. Of course, you're going to protect Connor, Ehlers, Scheifele, Dubois. You can get a little bit creative with Lowry or Kopp at the very bottom, but I'm perfectly fine with protecting those two.
Really, the only guy that I think outside of Lowry or Kopp that they would consider would be Mason Appleton.
Yep.
Part of that is cost controlled at $900,000. He's a very cheap depth player for them.
Yep.
But I think these 7 guys are pretty obvious to me.
Yep.
They felt pretty easy. Obviously, Hellebuck is an easy decision. That said, I think the backup, Laurent Brossoit, has been really solid for them.
I think Brossoit is more interesting than a lot of the names we've thrown out as the potential backup goaltender so far.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. If Seattle rolled into next season with a Jake Allen and Brossoit goaltending tandem, it's not great.
But it'll get you by.
But I think it could be competitive. Like I don't think that's a bottom of the barrel pairing. It's not like Winnipeg's had any kind of a good defense the last couple of years. That Brossoit has been like putting up really good numbers behind a mediocre or behind a great defense, where you're like, oh, these numbers are inflated because he's behind a great team. It's not that's not the case at all. Yeah, so I think he's interesting, but the really hard one here, Logan Stanley, they've been waiting around. He finally came into his own in the postseason. As an RFA, finally earned a role on the team. Like Dylan DeMello was signed to be an important piece for them. He was acquired at the deadline and given a 3-year deal, and then got hurt. And so I think it comes down to Stanley and DeMello. They can't do 8 where they go 4-4.
No way, yeah.
Because then
like someone like Scheifele or Ehlers or Dubois.
Or Connor. It would be Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers, or Dubois. One of those guys is gone.
Yep.
Unless they get Wheeler to waive his NMC, and then they could do 4 and 4. But then they probably lose Adam Lowry, who they just gave a 5-year deal to.
Yeah.
So they also don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So this is Logan Stanley or Dylan DeMello, and for me, I'm like, look, again, I'm going with age on this one. He was a first round pick. He's a guy they've just been waiting for. He finally stepped up into a full-time job at 23. He's a better bet to do something than Dylan DeMello, who was a late bloomer at 28.
I mean, if they leave DeMello out there, I think it's an easy pick for Seattle. They just take DeMello and move on.
Yep.
But I think it's a little bit more interesting if they leave Stanley out there, because then I think you do have to consider Brossoit a little bit more.
I agree, just because the defensive market, as we've talked about, it will be better.
Yep.
You know, I mean, if they took only defensemen just from the Central Division, okay, from the lists that we put together today, they would have Capobianco, Calvin DeHaan. I guess they could go with Julius Honka or Andre Sekera or
Alexiak if they do a little UFA magic. Yeah.
Exactly. Alexiak, and then you're talking Matt Dumba, Carson Soucy from Minnesota. Nashville would be a tougher one. It'd be like Carrier or Freddie Allard, Goodbranson.
Or Borbietsky on your bottom pairing or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then Vince Dunn, and then Dylan DeMello or Logan Stanley. So
that's a serviceable NHL defense,
right? Like they just built, and that does not count Colorado, who you could have taken Ryan Graves from.
Yep.
So you could take Ryan Graves or Eric Johnson from the Avalanche. Like they could build an entire decent defense just from the Central Division alone. So when we talk about how the defense, there will be guys available throughout the league. You're talking that this is a perfect example of what we're talking about right here. They could just ignore every other position and draft 8 defenders from this division and have a good defense.
Yep.
So I think that's something that they should keep in mind, and that's why I think when we talk about if it's Stanley instead of DeMello, you strongly consider Brossoit.
Yep, just because you can't build an entire 30 picks of defensemen, unfortunately. But
yeah, they're required to take in like 16 forwards.
I believe it's 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, and 3 goaltenders. No, it's.
I think those are the minimums.
Yeah, no, you're right. I believe it's 16, 15. No, sorry, it's 15, 9, and 3, and then they have flex a couple of picks that can be whatever. Yeah.
It's 14, 9, and 3.
Is it 4? I was right in the beginning. Goddamn.
Yep.
Should have just trusted my gut.
Should have just trusted the gut.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, they have to take at least 14 forwards, so they can't just pick 20 defensemen.
Yeah.
Just only pick defensemen and then go, all right, boys, we're open for business. Come get your defenseman from Seattle.
That's right. A true redistributing of the defense around the NHL. Is 30 guys. And they would keep, so they could keep 7 or 8 of them from themselves, and then they would have to make 23 deals.
Just the number 4 defenseman on every team in the league just swaps. Like
that's right. Just keeps rolling on.
Yeah, they can take a max of 13 D-men if they used all their flex picks on D.
Which they should.
Yes, agreed. But yeah, that's a look at the Central Division for the expansion draft. Some teams not a big effect, but you look at teams like Minnesota and Nashville especially, and you're saying they could lose a serious piece here.
Yeah. We didn't even really have the Duchesne Johansson conversation for Nashville because I don't think they'll do it.
I don't think
but
either.
If they expose one of those guys and say, please take off $8 million off of our books,
yep.
I think they should do it.
I would.
Yep.
Same story as Tarasenko there, right? Basically.
Although part of Tarasenko's appeal is just there's just 2 years left.
That's
With Duchesne, it's like you got 6
Yeah,
more years, baby.
Yeah, Johansson has through 2025 too, so I
Yeah.
guess it is a little bit longer term of a commitment, but those are also centers, so
Yep.
give and take, but
And to be honest, just getting out of Nashville might be
the
the
cure all
elixir.
a little bit, yeah.
for some of those guys because they all were fine, and then they got to Nashville, and then problems started. So
Yeah, definitely fair. So that's going to do it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow looking at the Pacific Division. We'll round out the other divisions through the rest of the week. Be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Helps us out a ton. Again, when y'all do that, gets us in the algorithm. Gets people from Seattle, hopefully, watching this video, so maybe they know what they can get from the Central as well. But
if I was a Seattle fan, I would be watching every video that I could find on YouTube of these
maximum
guys.
consumption. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
I would just be 1,000% in on like, what do these random dudes have to say about who we could take? Bam, I'm in.
Yep, exactly right. So, hello, Sergeant Pickles. How you doing? In any case, we appreciate all y'all. We are out of here for the day. Hope y'all have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will talk to y'all tomorrow.